all of the fragrances behind me right now, all 200 of these beautiful bottles of scented alcohol, poof, imagine they all just disappeared and I had to restart my entire fragrance collection. The worst possible case scenario for any fragrance collector. This is how I would go about doing that. You might be wondering why I'm in such a calm and strange mood. It's because at the time of recording this, I still don't know if TikTok's getting banned or not. This whole process has emotionally drained the life out of me. I've got nothing left to give. I've got nothing. If I lost all 200 plus of my fragrances, bam, there was a house fire, or aliens came and they realized they wanted to smell good, so they just took all my fragrances. The first thing I would do is to stop listening to fragrance influencers like me talking to you right now. And I know that might come as a shock. I'm trying to grow my following base. I'm trying to make money off basically talking about fragrances. And I'm telling you right now to stop listening to people like me. Let me explain. When I first got into fragrances 3 or 4 years ago, I followed the words of Jeremy Fragrance like it was literally its own religion. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but I knew nothing about scented alcohol and I wanted to learn more so bad. So every single day and night, I would watch these fragrance influencers, Jen Scents, School of Scent, Jeremy Fragrance, Chaos Fragrances, and I love them all to this day. I've met many of them in real life now, and I love them all. But I was naive, and I thought if they liked a fragrance, if my favorite fragrance creators liked a fragrance, I must like it too, and I have to go out and buy it as soon as I hear them talk positively about a fragrance. And that is not what you want to do when you're just getting into collecting fragrances, because you don't even know what you like. I am not by any means telling you to not listen to them at all, or to not consume any fragrance content. Consume fragrance content, but take it with, at most, a grain of salt. Maybe a little pinch of pepper on top as well, but please try and keep a level head and decide on your own personal beliefs and, your own personal taste and preferences if you truly like, or hopefully even love a fragrance enough to spend your own hard-earned money on it. Don't just go off purely what other people talk about when it comes to fragrances, because fragrances are an extremely personal thing, just like fashion and clothing. If you saw your favorite fashion influencer talking about a jacket and you see this jacket on him and you think it looks awful, you wouldn't go out and buy that jacket, right? It's just harder with fragrances because you can't smell a fragrance through a screen, but you can see a piece of clothing through the screen. So go out and try them for yourself. If you can, get samples of fragrances you're interested in, like this one here. It's a fragrance sample, and I'm gonna wear this a few times and test it out for myself on skin. And then if I really love it after trying it a few times, I might buy the full bottle. That's the mentality you wanna have when it comes to getting into fragrances. And that's the mentality I would have if I started from scratch. Now, the first 2 fragrances I would repurchase if I lost all 200 would be just 2 classics that I know simply work, and they're not trends. They're, scent profiles that are going to be around for years to come. I know I'm probably never going to get bored of them. And the first one I would pick is basically anything from the YSL Y line. These 2 are my favorites. This is the Y EDP. This is the first one I got. And then afterwards, about 6 months later, I got Y Intense. And they both kind of serve different purposes. This one, I think, is more easy to wear day to day. It's a little bit sweeter. It's more aquatic. Whereas Y Intense is definitely more earthy and has a little bit more spiciness to it with that patchouli. I honestly love both of them equally. I think if I could only choose one though, it would be Y EDP Intense, especially with that green apple top note to give it that sweetness. It is a beautiful fragrance. It's just so addictive. Another kind of timeless and classic scent profile that I'll go with is one that would be used more for the winter when starting over my collection, and that is the Dior Homme Intense. This is the original Intense, not the original Dior Homme, but Dior Homme Intense, and then this is the Dior Homme Parfum that obviously came out after the Intense version. I think if I could only pick one, it would be Dior Homme Parfum. It has a more dark, mysterious vibe. It's got some leather. Not quite as versatile as Dior Homme Intense, but to be completely honest with you, I don't think either of these fragrances are particularly versatile. This is when you want to dress up in the wintertime, maybe a fancy dinner date, a yacht party, something cool like that. These fragrances would work perfectly. And then for the daytime, more kind of summer use, then I can go with the YSL. But the question you're all probably wondering is, Finn, what is that silver over there? Well, let me show you guys. This is the 100,000 subscriber YouTube play button. And I'm going to use this opportunity to quickly thank you guys so much for your ongoing support on this channel. I am eternally grateful. This plaque is truly my childhood dream, but now I've hit 100,000 subscribers. I want 250,000 by the end of next year. So if you're watching this right now and you're realizing like, crap, I haven't actually subscribed yet, I keep forgetting to, now is your chance. I would appreciate it forever and ever, and I'll give you lots of kisses, and it's free. So the next sort of principle I would follow, and I guess I wish I knew sooner if I had to restart my collection, is I wouldn't be afraid to go for more cheap and affordable but still high quality clone fragrances in order to expand my collection at a lower cost. Now, this is kind of a controversial topic in the fragrance community. Some people are super against clones. They think it's disrespectful to the brand, to the original perfumer. They think it's unethical. And look, if that's your position on it, that is totally fine. You can skip through this section. Personally, however, I think designer and niche brands are, continuing to increase their price points well too high. Like too high where the average person with an average income, it's just unattainable for them. And I think, that's just not good enough. So for now, I think it's totally fine to be supporting these Middle Eastern clone companies. And another benefit of, looking into these clone companies where they sell fragrances for cheaper is that you get a wider variety of different scents in your collection for just an overall lower cost. Perhaps my favorite fragrance clone brand right now is Game of Spades. And the reason for that is they don't sacrifice on quality, even though they're making fragrances that are more affordable price point. Now, for a clone, this is a more expensive brand. They run at about 80 USD, and that's on discounters. I think they retail for around 150 or so. But they're kind of got an interesting niche because they're in the affordable clone niche, but they're at a much higher price point compared to a lot of clone fragrances. But I mean, you can really tell in just their packaging, the bottles, the atomizers, how heavy the bottles are, the juice itself, the performance, the blend, the quality of the ingredients. You can really tell they did not sacrifice anything in terms of just their overall product. And before anyone starts commenting, I'm not getting paid by this brand. I know people are very skeptical, and fair enough, I'm skeptical too. I'm just clearing that up. Their most popular fragrance, and the one I would probably repurchase first in my collection, is Full House. This smells like Louis Vuitton's Imagination, which is a 500 Australian dollar fragrance. Extremely soapy, very uplifting, very refreshing. With a new collection, it's nice to have something you can reach for when it's really, really hot outside. And you don't want something that's going to feel cloying or kind of bog you down or bog others' noses as well in the high heat. And also, to prove what I was saying about the quality of Game of Spades, I don't know if you can even tell, but the cap is heavy. The atomizer is extremely pressurized. And like I said, you can't smell it through the screen, but it's about 90% close to Louis Vuitton's Imagination. If I had room in my budget when restarting my fragrance collection, I would also get Game of Spades High Roller. Now, High Roller is a very versatile fragrance because it has a similar scent profile to Creed Aventus, which is the most well-known niche fragrance of all time. It's a masculine, kind of woody, citrusy, leathery scent. You can use it literally any day of the year. Hot, cold, rain, shine, and this is no exception. But I actually think this leans a little bit more kind of wintry and dark. It takes the Aventus DNA, but it smells less citrusy and leathery and almost adds a creamy nutmeg pistachio. I've never seen a company do a twist of Aventus this well. I mean, this might be my favorite Aventus inspired fragrance ever. So if I can afford it in whatever my budget is when my collection disappears, I would pick this one up too. If you're sitting there thinking, Finn, I want to explore these clone fragrances, but Game of Spades is just a little bit out of my budget, well, that is totally okay, because there is this very well-known Middle Eastern brand called Lattafa that make, in my opinion, the best bang-for-buck fragrances of all time. And these two are their best-selling and my personal favorites, the original Lattafa Khamrah and Lattafa Khamrah Kawa. So these are undoubtedly inspired by Kilian's Angel Share, a beautiful, cozy date night niche fragrance, and it kind of has its own little twist on it. This is a more cinnamon heavy inspired take. It still has some booziness, but that booziness is toned down, which in my opinion makes it just more appealing for people that aren't super into more unique smelling fragrances. I feel like this is more generally appealing to the mass public. The Kawa version is a similar deal to Lattafa Khamrah and Angel Share, but it adds a really unique dark roasted coffee that in my experience lasts from opening to to dry down of the fragrance. I also find in general, the sweetness is toned down and the spiciness is toned down just a little bit. If you love the smell of coffee like I do, go with the Kawa version. If you're not so sure, I would just stick with the original Latafa Camera because this one is safer and honestly probably is more mass appealing and would get more compliments. But I do like the uniqueness of the Kawa version. Both of these run for around 30 to 40 USD depending on where you buy them from. The performance is great. The smell is honestly just unbelievable for how cheap it is. I mean, like when you smell these for the first time, you're going to be questioning how you only just spent 40 bucks on them. Like, it's mind-blowing. The third and final principle, and honestly the most important principle I'd follow if I lost all my fragrances and I had to restart, is controlling my fragrance addiction and my addiction of impulse buying fragrances. And this principle is inspired by, I think his name's Alex Edwards. I'll pop up his YouTube channel here, and it's one video. It's called What is Fragrance Addiction and How I Dealt with It. And it's a really interesting video of talking about something that isn't discussed in the fragrance community. And it's the fact that fragrances, just like so many things in our world, can become an addiction. And if you're not careful, you can just end up spending so much of your hard-earned money on fragrances that you don't even truly like. What he talks about in the video kind of ties into what I've already discussed in this video, and a big point is about not listening too hard to people like me, because at the end of the day, you and I are so different and we have so many different tastes and preferences. But the next point he makes, and my favorite in the video, is buy a fragrance that you love. Because fragrances, there's gonna be so many out there that you like. I mean, like, I can go into a store right now, try 100 fragrances that I don't own, and I might like 85 of them. I'm not particularly fussy as well. I might love only one or two. And the ones that I love are the ones I should then sample, and then if I still love them, buy them. Does that make sense? There needs to be standards before you buy a fragrance, especially if it's an expensive one. With that in mind, two fragrances that happen to be niche and expensive. With all of that in mind, these are two very expensive, and they happen to be niche fragrances actually, and they passed all of the tests and more. The first one is Mind Games Prodigy. This bottle is insane. It's kind of hard to see on the camera, but it's like a white gradient. Now, this one I sampled for, a couple weeks. It was a new release from Mind Games. I had to pick it up. It's a rosy vanilla bomb. Super powdery vanilla in the dry down. I'm just loving my realistic powdery vanillas at the moment. This does lean arguably a little bit feminine, but I think I pull it off. I mean, at least I think I do. Before anyone comments, I have received free Mind Games fragrances in the past. Like, I've done deals with them. I haven't been paid or anything, but Mind Games is my favorite brand. Unequivocally, unbiased, it is my favorite. This bottle I paid for. I've paid for 3, and I think I've received 3 or 4 for free. So I've got some skin in the game when it comes to Mind Games. I haven't just gotten all of them for free. Everything from the magnetic cap to the gorgeous atomizer, the amazing smell, the fact that this lasts around 7 hours on skin with moderate projection. I love everything about this fragrance. And I'm actually going to Japan, not just for fragrance. I mean, I'm going to Japan just to explore Japan in a couple weeks. And I'm there for a couple weeks. And this is one of the 3 fragrances I'm going to bring. And I'm probably going to be wearing this one the most because it's going to be nice, cold, and snowy over there. And I feel like this fragrance is going to thrive in that setting. Definitely one to check out if you like rose and vanilla heavy fragrances. The final fragrance I would just buy outright if I lost my entire collection is similar to Mind Games Prodigy in the fact that it's an expensive niche fragrance. Parfums de Marly Oja. Now, the same rule, the principle applies here. This was taken through rigorous sampling and testing before I bought it. And I actually have 2 bottles of it now. I love it so much. And that's how you should be able to tell if you made a good fragrance decision. If after you use an entire bottle of it, if you still love the smell, congratulations, you've done it right. Because although we can grow out of certain scent profiles, you've cooked. If you go through an entire liquid bottle of fragrance and you still want more, and I'm gonna want more of this one. This is a gourmand in its purest form. Gourmand, by the way, means an edible smell. This literally just smells like cinnamon, sugar cookies. The most cinnamon heavy fragrance I've ever smelled. But luckily, cinnamon is one of my favorite smells. You notice how I said one of my favorite smells? Because this fragrance personally is one that I love. But a lot of you watching this right now, I bet you're going to type up Parfums de My Eau Jean on the internet and look at the cheapest way to buy it. Please don't do that, because then I'm going to have a bunch of people on my next video complaining I told them to buy Eau Jean and they don't like it. You've just gone against every principle I've listed out in this video. That is going to wrap up this video on how I would restart my 200 plus bottle collection if I lost them all. So to recap, I would buy the YSL and Dior Homme Intense as my two kind of sophisticated, timeless picks. Then I would move on to a couple clone fragrances to diversify, you know, the scent profiles I have in my collection without breaking the bank account. So a couple of Game of Spades fragrances and also maybe a couple of Lattafa fragrances. And finally, I would pick one or two expensive, high-end niche fragrances that I truly, truly love, that I know I'm going to want in my collection for a long period of time. Something like Mind Games Prodigy or Parfums de My Eau Jean. Have a blessed rest of your day. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.